Not everyone who sits at the counter at Coffee Talk likes each other. Some of them outright can't stand each other. But when every soul is given room to share, they all find themselves changed by the end of the night. This is Means of Play. Welcome to Means of Play podcast. I am one of the hosts, Cozy Tea Pastor Ian, and with me is, of course, co-host and fellow friend gamer, Pastor, Nerd Pastor Nate. Welcome in.
That's me, fellow friend gamer. That's what I go by.
Every week we pick a game and read it the way you would read a sacred text, slowly, together, and with the assumption that it has something to teach us about being human. These aren't reviews. These are not takes. What we're doing is a reading. And today, we're reading Coffee Talk Tokyo. Well, before we get into the game itself, we want to start with a few things to ground us, bring us to the present moment. And the first we want to follow up on is our last episode. We asked a question at the end to get us ready for talking about Coffee Talk Tokyo. And that was, we really wanted to know your hot beverage of choice. And we were specific. We didn't want you to just say coffee or tea or hot chocolate. We want details. We want specifics. If you've got a place, you could also name, like, this is where I either need to get this drink from or enjoy drinking this drink. But we are recording this a little early, so we don't have your responses yet, but we're looking forward to seeing them. And if you've got more today, share them in the comments. Let us know. But we'll start with you, Nate. What is your hot beverage of choice?
Yes. So I have a very specific one. We have a coffee shop in a local town called Fausto, and they have a Honolulu mocha, which is typically a coffee with white chocolate and coconut. I have them make me a dark chocolate Honolulu mocha, and it is my absolute favorite warm beverage. I'm a coffee guy, big time coffee over tea. I do like tea, but coffee for me is my weakness, my kryptonite. And so you add in two of my other favorite flavors, which are dark chocolate and coconut, and you get the perfect beverage. And that is why I was so specific, is because, as much as I love just normal coffee, I am a warm beverage fiend. And so if I can find more warm beverages, I'll take it. How about yourself?
Yeah, I am more of a tea drinker than a coffee. And so right now I would say the one like go-to comfort for me has been that I can have like any time of the day for a hot beverage is I really do love a good rooibos tea. But specifically what I like to add to it is maybe a little bit of vanilla syrup and then some like frothed like almond milk or something like that, just to like make it almost feel like a coffee drink. I don't know. It's like an in-between, but love the like earthiness of the rooibos, but get a little bit of sweetness from vanilla and just a little cold cream in there frothed up. Yeah, perfect drink.
There's a tea guy that has like a social media where all he talks about is tea, and he has a store where he sells these little like tea oranges, these little tiny oranges filled with tea, and I've always wanted one. I'm like, this is my dream. I don't know why, but something about the gimmicks of tea, the dried leaves like shoved into a tea ball or something like that, it does make it more exciting. I think that while I do love coffee, and there are certainly ways of making it bougie, tea just feels so much more fun.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, I'm trying to kiss up to the cozy tea pastor here. That's what I'm trying to do.
I am wearing my t-shirt today, by the way,
Love it.
For the show. So one more question that we wanted to ask, and just a way to check in to see where we're at, is just a little gratitude praxis, just something to say, hey, what are we grateful for this week, this morning, today, as we are coming to this episode? Had a really good restful weekend. haven't had that in a while, and it was one of those like last Friday I actually was able to say, like, someone was like, what did you do this weekend? And it was one of those like moments of like, well, I did nothing. I did nothing at all, and it was really great. So I think like I'm just very grateful for a little bit of time to catch my breath when things have been steadily busy. It's always been something. So it was nice to have a day where there wasn't anything on the calendar. But what
Nice.
about you, Nate?
I am grateful to have worlds to return to. I have started playing the new Sword Art Online game that is modeled after the very first season, very first half of season 1 of Sword Art. And it feels like going home. They've done a really good job of recreating the world. And the game itself is, I think, good, not great kind of thing. But I do think that being in that space again feels really nice. So.
Awesome. Well, if you have anything that you're grateful for as well as you're listening, as you're watching on YouTube and you want to let us know, we're always open to hearing it. But even if you just name it for yourself, take that moment, tell yourself what you're grateful for. It's just a good way to check in on where we're at for the day and how we might move forward in the rest of it.
Yeah, with that, we'll get started with what we're talking about today. We've already mentioned we're talking about Coffee Talk Tokyo. That's the game that we're choosing to read. This is actually the third entry into the Coffee Talk series. The first 2 games are sort of connected. One is like a sequel to the other. This one is like, I would say, tangentially related at most. There are some characters that show up in the social media feed. There's like a character that might show up in the game itself. But for the most part, you are playing in a different coffee shop this time. So you're still in Coffee Talk, but instead of the classic Coffee Talk set in Seattle, this time you are set in Tokyo, which also means that you're going to be talking to a lot of mythical, fantastic creatures with a more Japanese folklore connection. So you're going to have a Kappa, a Yuki-onna, a ghost, water dragon, kitsune, all sorts of characters that are going to feel a bit foreign to us. It'd be surprising to see any of them in Seattle. I guess it'd be surprising to see any of them anywhere, but you understand what I mean. This game is a visual novel that is connected with some mechanics of brewing coffee and tea in a kind of cafe simulation vibe. One of my favorite in this genre. I really, really love the Coffee Talk series. I have a particular affinity for them, and I will also would be remiss if I don't say a quick rest in peace to Fami, the original game creator. I'm just glad to see that they've continued to put these on. A little bit about this game. The Coffee Talk, like I said, puts you behind the same type of counter, but in a whole new city with a whole new cast. All of these various characters are going to be these mythical folklore creatures, but they're going to be sitting aside some of the more mundane people that you would expect, a stay-at-home dad, a convenience store clerk, folks like that. But regardless of how fantastic or mythical they may be, no one is more or less worthy of a seat at the table, a seat at the counter, or a drink to be served. That's the wager in this episode that we're going to be exploring is hospitality, and the reality that hospitality that has to sort between people, that has to sort between who deserves attention isn't actually hospitality. That's just triage. This game refuses to triage through people. And then one thing that we want to really talk about in this one is the actual things that are being dealt with by the various members. In particular, we're going to take a focus on Vin, who is a different character for this game, which is the barista's assistant. So normally you play as the barista and you don't really have anybody helping you, but Vin is kind of your helper this time. However, a little bit of a catch is that they are dealing with a body that is breaking down, prosthetics that aren't holding up, pain that is never going away and doesn't have a fix. There's a good bit of tension in this one that is being explored. And so we want to read it through that lens. We want to read Coffee Talk Tokyo as a game that is about hospitality, that is a game about the mundane of life, but also that presents a lot of tension in the midst of that and presents it in a way that proves that even in fictionalized worlds, familiar tensions can bubble up to the top. So as we get started with the conversation, we'll go ahead and enter into the time with just talking about the counter, the level counter, the equal space that everybody gets to enter into. So like I mentioned, you play as a barista, serving out coffee drinks and tea drinks. But it is so much more than that, and also so much less. It's so much simpler. Since you're running this establishment, anybody that walks in is whoever gets served. There's not a big concern about payment or about any of those kind of things. It really is just whoever walks in that day is whoever walks in that day. And you are kind of beholden to them regardless. So it has some Cheers vibes. It has some like everybody knows your name kind of vibes. It's a place where no matter how new you may be, the barista will treat you like a regular and will welcome you with open arms. So yeah, what did you think about that in this game? Did you think it was presented about the same, different, that stand out for you? What does that have to do with hospitality? And
Yeah. And like you said, this is the third coffee talk. And so in some ways, I've played the first. I haven't played the second. Now I've played the third. It wasn't necessarily, I just didn't get around to playing the second, but I was really interested in playing again. And even as the person playing the game, it was like coming home to the counter again. Like the mechanics felt the same, in some ways things didn't feel that new, or they weren't exciting in like a wow kind of way, but it was just like, it felt like home, in that, yes, the place has changed. It's Tokyo. It's a new city. So there are things about the cafe that feel different, and the people are different, but the practice felt like home. And I think that's also the work of the barista, of yourself, is creating this space that says that, no matter what you come in with, and if you've played the games, people come in with all sorts of heaviness, excitement, stress, you name it, they're holding it, and there's still a seat for them, there's a space for them. And like you said, if this was an actual business, like it would be closed within a week, because it doesn't seem like money is a concern, right? You're not trying to get as many customers as you can. You're trying to offer a space where the people that need to be here feel welcomed and they feel safe, and there is a home for them. And I think that goes beyond just the counter itself. There's something about the way that you, as your character, offers the drinks, extends the hand, and also creates a space where you're not the only welcome crew. And I think we could talk about that more as like, once this place is yours, kind of like Cheers, you're also a part of the hospitality team, right? The other people at the counter then want to know you by name too, and want to hear your story. And so it becomes this community space that is not owned or controlled by anyone, but it just is for everyone.
Yeah. And each of the games has had that kind of element where you've always had kind of a trusty right hand of somebody who is like pretty much always there. In the very first game, it was Freya, who was like this character that was writing a book back in the corner always. And so like they were just always kind of present in the space. And then in this one, they do an interesting twist with Vin, who is being trained by you. So whereas Freya might just be like another frequenter of the establishment, I've noticed in this, I remember noticing as playing this game that there are a lot of moments where you as the barista are kind of like guiding and directing Vin into how to build relationships, and when to say something and when not to say something, and how much to say, and when to watch our tongue and all that kind of thing, which is a relationship that the barista doesn't have with anyone else in any of the games. There's never, I can't recall at least, a time where the barista did anything less than like politely steer the conversation if it got out of hand. But with Vin, like there will be not rude, but just like very clear direction of like how we should actually handle this situation in a really nice way. And I think that's super interesting. One of the things that this game has always done significantly well is, if this is a coffee talk shop that people are just showing up to get some coffee and to talk, not everybody's going to show up every night. You're not going to have a full house every night. Some people are going to show up sometimes with others. Sometimes they're going to show up on their own. Sometimes they just won't show up at all. And so you get this like rotating cast of characters who at the start of the game probably don't know each other, but by the end do know each other, form relationships with one another, maybe give each other advice. I found there was a lot of advice in this game in particular, but I think that part of the narrative is really crucial to the story. Is people are always showing up at different times and getting to know one another in their own capacity, which I think is crucial to each character's growth, because they want to, the game writers really want to get across that none of these characters are really through with the process. Even by the end of the game, they still have things to work on, but they need each other. They need the community of people that they're meeting to, maybe to a certain problematic extent, like solve their problems. I think the game tries not to do that too much, but to a certain extent, like these other people have exactly the puzzle piece fit that the other people need to answer their questions and to fit in and to provide kind of a salve to whatever might be ailing them.
Well, I think that's like what you named at the beginning. Like, this game is careful not to like triage the people coming in, right? You're, as the barista, you're setting the counter, but you're not. You're making the choice of when to speak and when to allow others to speak, and also to let people work through what they might be going through instead of just giving them an answer. Like, there is advice, but it's never told as like, you have to do this, but there's this like, and I think that's community at its best, right? Is that it's, if they were to come in and you as the barista, seems like you're kind of the expert in this, like you're already, you kind of know how to do what you need to do and to help guide conversations, but you choose not to speak because someone could come in and you're like, I know exactly what they need, right? But you don't say that because if you just see them as a problem needing to be fixed, they will get that fix and then leave. And there's not really relationship there. It's more of an exchange of like commodities almost. It's more like capitalist in a way, where clearly that's not the drive for this space. And I think like you think about any kind of intentional community, I think that's where it's at its strongest, is like it's not there. Yes, growth happens, but growth only happens the more you're open to it and the more you're able to be like vulnerable in the space and to share who you are with the other people there. And I think that's a pretty beautiful thing about both this game and like I think the lesson in community building is like community is not there just to give you answers. I think it's there to help you walk through finding, I don't even know if it's answers, but finding life wholeness. This game kind of ends with a nod to like what it means to feel whole. And I think that's what we're getting at here is like you're finding wholeness, not necessarily like fixes. And there's a difference there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's crucial. And I think that this game presents, and all three of them really have presented what it actually means to do like leadership in community building, which is a word that we don't often use, especially outside of the church world. Like I think in the church world, we talk a lot about what like pastoral ministry is. But when you get to like third spaces, like a coffee shop, I don't know how much people talk about the importance of not feeling the need to always solve, not feeling the need to always step in, but instead seeing your role as essentially a kind of guide, as a kind of like a leader of others. That's one of the things that like is crucial in Christian ministries is like, you're really not supposed to be the one doing all of the things as the pastor of a space. And while it is the responsibility of the barista in Coffee Talk to make the coffee, like it's not necessarily their responsibility to, for instance, let's say you've got a couple characters that have a problem. Like you're not supposed to say, hey, person A, you have a problem with person B and you need to work it out. Like that's not your role. Your role is to sit there and to make sure it doesn't escalate. Sure. But your more important role is just to sit there and be, and just kind of exist. The best thing often that we can do in this kind of pastoral sense is just be good listeners, just be good presences. And, yeah, that solves a lot of the problems, I think, in this game. The people that need something are really just needing somebody to hear them and somebody to sit and be with them. This game doesn't give you a ton of like visual novel, like pick your response opportunities. That's not really what this game is about. But like in visual novel terms, I think a lot of the solutions in this one would be just the like ... option, just to like say nothing, because I think that's the more important work in this one.
Yeah, that kind of leads us into like one of the things we wanted to just kind of name and observe a little bit in this game. Again, not to like overanalyze or break down, but maybe invite you as another player that maybe wants to experience this game to just pay attention to is the ways that as the barista, as that person who often their response is more like in the ... range, is like there's a lot of different tensions that come up in the different characters. There are people or beings of like Nate set up before, maybe we don't see in our actual world, but they reflect things that we might experience. So there's tensions between races, between a Kappa and a water dragon who wouldn't normally ever share the same space and be in the same room. There's tensions around broken families, and tension in the midst of a grief where there's a ghost that is cannot move on because there is some unfinished business. And so there's people trying to help her and also probably bringing up some grief of their own along the way. You've got people with, Ven with the disabilities and the tension of the ongoing or the chronic pain and not really having any answers. There's tension between class dynamics that a child is experiencing, right? There's all these tensions that don't necessarily just get fixed, but they are there. And I think there's room for us to feel where they might hit close to home for ourselves. I don't know if you felt that in any particular moments in the game.
Yeah, I will say this is the sassiest coffee talk. I thought that this was, man, there was some drama. Like, I think that this one, I don't know if it escalated or like got to a point that it was ever out of hand, except for maybe one particular tension for me. But like, for the most part, I don't recall any of the narratives in this game series so far being quite as abrasive. I think that this game really had something that it wanted to explore and wanted to present, and that was the reality of like interrelationship tension, and the ways that we handle one another. And I think that honestly, one of the ones that is the most intriguing to me was the Kappa and the water dragon, because of the fact that it was so instantly tense, and you have this perceived history that we don't really get. Like I never understood it even by the end of the game. There was like this named history of the Kappa and the water dragon both blame each other for their river drying up. And maybe the Kappas felt like the water dragons, who maybe again it was like a class situation, didn't like fully support them, didn't fully respond to them or whatever when the river dried up. Or maybe it was even their fault, or maybe they blamed the other. There was kind of this muddy history that never really got explained. All we got to know was that they like hated each other. There was animosity. And then it was also tied to like age. The Kappa in particular is like a retired person, an older person who is tied to a part of history that we also don't get to see with any of the other characters. And so it's like this muddy, nuanced mess of tension between like ageism, racism, classism, and things that we just like have no understanding of. And I actually found that to be what made it maybe an easier pill to swallow, was like, because of the nature of this game being in a familiar enough setting of Tokyo. I've never been to Tokyo. I'd love to go. But it's familiar enough. It's on Earth. It's at a coffee bar. I love coffee. Like everything felt grounded enough. But then you also have this like alternate fictionalized reality. So you have those normal things mixed in with like, I don't know a water dragon. I've never met a Kappa. I've held a lot of frogs. But like there's a lot of things that I cannot possibly wrap my mind around. And then there's also this history that I can't be privy to. And I kind of liked that they didn't tell us because it allowed for us to really just live in, I also don't know all of the nuances of real life. I don't know all of the different tensions between different races, especially whenever you get outside of like the United States dynamics of that. Like whenever you get into other countries' racial histories, I have no idea. And so it allowed me to live and play in this alternating version of not only history, but also of current present reality tensions. And I felt like it didn't shy away from that. It allowed it to be abrasive. It allowed it to be tense so that I got to kind of like rest in that awkwardness rather than to feel the anxiety myself. I think if it had been any more real, it would have been a very different game. It would have been a game where I had to play in like 30-minute chunks because I couldn't handle the reality of the tension in that situation. It would be a lot to wrestle with. But because of the fictionalized playful nature, and I don't mean playful in like a fun way. I mean playful as in like a literal, like they're literally playing with history. It allowed it to be something that I could wrestle with at my own pace and not feel too connected to the outcomes or to the history.
It also is like you're behind, like you can't go anywhere. I think is the other really interesting part is like there's no fleeing from the tension. There's
Right.
no defeating the tension either. Like this isn't a combat game, right? So you can't just like swing your way through the tension. You just have to move through it. And I think there is something of like, I don't know if it's comfort, but there is the design of the game where like you said earlier, you're not picking the dialogue in the moments. You just keep moving through it. I don't know, it helped me in the moments of tension to just be able to focus on observing it and to notice it and to say moving through it doesn't mean solving it. Like moving through it didn't mean that you as the barista stepped into the middle of it. Like you said, you make sure that things don't escalate beyond maybe other people's comfort or safety in the room at the coffee bar, but you allow it to kind of unfold in a space that is still honoring the truth that there is a place for all of them at the counter, even with the tension. And it meant that they didn't always sit next to each other or they distanced themselves, but there was still room for them at the counter, and that had to be upheld. I think that was like an honor or a practice that was like, hey, you can be here. And it wasn't ever named. It's not like you as the barista ever said that, but it was just kind of, you could feel it in the, there's tension, you could talk it out, and no one has to leave the counter because of it.
Yeah. From a gameplay perspective, that's a lot of pressure on the writers. I've never really considered that, but like, the only thing you really control as the player is what drinks get served. And so literally it's like a hangry meter. Like if you serve them the wrong drink, then things don't go well. But like as long as you serve them the correct drink, you're going to get like the perfect true ending of the game. And that means that like it really is up to the games writers to kind of read your mind as a player and to say like this is the way that this pans out. And maybe there's like a level of we just have to kind of accept that this is how characters are going to handle one another. But there's also a level of our responsibility as the barista and the writing of the games writers to the barista to like always have the right words, to always have the proper response. I'd never considered how tough that must actually be, especially when they're willing to throw this many tensions at us at once.
Yeah.
And I will say, so this game does something really intriguing, and this can be kind of our final beat of the conversation, that maybe we'll just explore one of them in particular, and that is Vin. So I've mentioned them a couple times. This is the character who is your like assistant, but is also dealing with really a myriad of chronic pains and chronic diagnoses that are going on. This was the first time I've ever seen a video game reference spoon theory, which I'm not sure if the listener is familiar with this, but I think it started on Tumblr. I'm like 99% certain this is a Tumblr thing, and this is the concept of when you start your day, you have a certain amount of spoons to give, and everything that you do takes spoons, and by the end of the day, when you've run out of spoons, you run out of spoons. There's nothing else you can do. And so Vin like directly references this. The host is like constantly checking in on Vin's level of spoons at the time. And there's this conversation about chronic illness around like this chronic dealing with whether it's exhaustion and fatigue or whether it's whatever's connected to the spoon theory, or whether it's like the literal chronic pain of a prosthetic that is draining Vin of their energy, that is not working properly, not functioning properly because of some pretty capitalist arguments that we don't necessarily have to get into here. But like, there's a lot going on in the midst of this. And because of that, Vin as a person just has to sort of deal. And sometimes they deal better than others, but regardless, like the nature of chronic pain is it never stops. It's never really a thing that you get to opt in or opt out of. It's just something that you either have the spoons for that day or you don't. So what did Vin do for you as a character?
Yeah, Vin was really interesting, especially like having that character right from the go, and more of their story. You learn a little more of their story as the game unfolds, as each night takes place, and as they show up and build relationships with the other people that come through Coffee Talk. But yeah, I think this we've already talked about tension, and there's tension here of like a server who also is in a space of needing a lot of additional care. And what does that look like? This is someone who is also helping to create this space that is welcoming and that the counter is for everyone. And they are often someone who needs to also hear that. And you as the barista have given them room to stay, like it seems like upstairs in the building, in an extra room that you have. And so there's always that, if there aren't any spoons left for Vin, they're out of spoons for the day, they can go back and rest. But there is this,
and they will spend entire days also.
Oh, like, yeah,
days away that they will just be resting. It's intriguing.
Yeah, and that even after that, even if they haven't, quote unquote, shown up for work, that the counter is also there for them. Like that doesn't mean that they don't still deserve it, right? It's still a space for them. And I think earlier in the game there was a heaviness, especially to Vin's presence at times, and there were times where I felt like the other guests at the cafe at Coffee Talk that night maybe had to do more caregiving for Vin than Vin could do for them. But those moments never felt hard. Those moments, at least for me, I would say, never felt difficult, or like I never was like, oh, Vin, you don't get it, or like you're not, I never felt frustrated with Vin. I definitely feel like the way that the designers created Vin and presented Vin was like, I don't know, never felt like pity or frustration or anything like that, but just felt what Vin was feeling a lot of the time, could feel the weight that they carried most days.
Yeah. I think that what was the hardest for me with Vin was throughout the game, there is a kind of like burgeoning romance that's happening between Vin and this other character named Blue. And it's adorable. It's a very cute romance. It's very fun to see their relationship building. But I think that's where I saw the most frustration from Vin. And that was where it maybe led to the biggest, I don't know, heartbreak is the word I'm kind of thinking of for them. And that is, they wanted to pursue this relationship. They longed for the time and the energy to do this. They longed for the spoons, and they just didn't have them. And so they would push themselves to beyond their breaking point. And I think that was, again, I don't know. Again, it was never frustration. It was never pity, but it was heartbreaking to see somebody wrestling with this perceived expectation of themselves to do more than they could do, to be more than they could be in that time, and to see that come out of a desire that's so intimate and so relatable as love. I mean, that was what got me for sure.
And I think Ven learned a lot moving through. There was a moment where Blue and Ven kind of have both this like heart to heart, but also kind of a fight after Ven tried to do something new and felt like their body just, they didn't have the spoons, right? They really felt, I think what I felt from Ven in that moment was kind of shame and frustration about their own ability or limitations, and Blue trying to be there for Ven, but there was definitely a disconnect there, learning about one another and how to be there for one another. And so it ends up being more like a fight. And so, but moving through that, and it took some time, I think Ven and you as the player start to see like Ven's growth in understanding what love looks like, which is that love looks like Blue, yes, speaking up in that moment, maybe missing the mark on how to communicate, and still wanting to show up later and continue to show up. Was like, I think Ven is learning as the nights go on what love for one another looks like, which is like not giving up on the people that you care about, and continuing to work on that. And so I think Ven is one of the most powerful stories of like growth. And by the end, all of Ven's problems are not solved, right? There's no miracle. There is some resolution, but there's still much to see. There's still growth to come. And yet, it feels like Ven's struggles start to move towards hope, even as some things change in difficult ways. We won't talk about, I'm not going to spoil any of the things, but like, I think Ven is just understanding more about what love looks like between people, and also what it looks like to love themselves a little more deeply than they did before.
Yeah. I was reminded, so having planted a church that's online, we don't meet strictly on Sundays. And so something that was really intriguing with our initial planting days, and really even into today, is a lot of the folks that find our community and fall in love with it are those who are already serving churches. So a lot of pastors, a lot of volunteers, key volunteers at churches that are very busy on Sundays and are looking for a place where they get to be themselves Monday through Saturday. And when I saw Ven, saw a lot of those people. Is like, this is the empty gas tank caregiver. This is the person who has felt a calling to love people, but needs to find a space where they're able to feel loved themselves. And I think that was just an eye-opening example for me, at least, was to see like what it looks like to provide room for people that don't always have room provided for them, or that they are the room providers even. And so I think that that's crucial to understanding this game and understanding what it wants to say and the story it wants to tell is, what is the worth of the third space is that it is to provide space for those who provide space. And that is just as much a part of the thesis as anybody else. Like, when we say that nobody has to earn a seat at the counter, we mean nobody, including those who offer care in other places. And so I think that's something that this game presents really well, and to an audience that needs it. So Along with Violet Evergarden, my ever recommended anime for pastoral care, I think that Coffee Talk is one that gets added to my list of what it means to care for the carers, what it means to provide care for those who are typically the ones to offer it. And I think that's where we can probably land by saying that nobody has to earn a seat at the counter, including those who provide the counter in the first place.
Absolutely. Well, we are going to wrap up this episode, but before we do, we've got a couple of things that we always like to end with and check in with one another and check in with you all as we move into whatever is coming up next for us. So I'd like to ask you a couple of questions that come out of our different spaces that we are creating online. So first, we'll start with Nate and Checkpoint. How did you checkpoint this week? How did you show up online? How did you show up in connecting with others this week?
Yeah, I have started a new campaign over on Instagram where I am creating a bullet journal with Pokemon cards and clipping out the cards and putting them on pieces of paper, kind of like junk journal style. And that has been very fun and a way of kind of taking social media a little bit less seriously. And so that's how I've been showing up is like, I feel like I always have to show up with so much weight and seriousness online that I kind of wanted to do a little a Ven thing for myself and to care for myself in this moment and do something that sounded like just plain old fun.
I'm going to go ahead and copy yours because I have enjoyed that I saw when your like first post went up. And so I would say something that has been meaningful for me is also like being a part of those and responding to seeing the first one, giving my response, giving you a Pokemon to choose for the next one. I think, yeah, it's been playful, fun, and just pleasing to see what the next video is going to look like. So, yeah, that's been a great little joy past couple of days.
Love it.
The second thing coming from my space as Cozy Tea Pastor and Cozy Tea Church is how are you cozy this week? Just one thing that maybe brought you rest, helped you pause. What brought cozy vibes?
Yeah, I got the game Lego Voyagers, and I did this very much on purpose. I saw somebody on socials talking about playing this game with their kiddo, and I have a kiddo who likes to play games, and so we sat down and started playing through it together. And it's very much a kind of Zen-esque puzzle game where you are two little one-by-one Lego pieces working together to solve some puzzles. And it's just been an all-around good time. I love getting to experience, my kiddo's first video games with her, and something that we get to play together that's also fairly cozy has been really nice.
Nice. One thing that my wife and I did, speaking of spaces, we were talking about space of coffee talk, is we're just kind of redecorating, I guess, changing some of the wall art in our house. We've been collecting some bird artwork, and so we've finally got some frames, the last frames we needed, and so spent a little bit of time this weekend finishing framing them and hanging them up, which for some may feel like a really stressful task, but I think it's the act of creating the space together and then getting to then be in a space that maybe looks a little different and feels a little different was just really nice. Now we get to look up at all our wall of bird art, which is very comforting.
Love it.
Unless you're afraid of birds.
Yeah, surrounded by them would probably not be a good idea.
Yeah. But as we go out into whatever's next, wherever we are, wherever life is taking us, whatever games we might be coming next, we want to remember what Coffee Talk Tokyo showed us, that nobody has to earn a seat at the counter. And that counter in life is just to say you belong, that your belonging is not tied to any kind of perceivable worth outside of, what you do for a living, what you don't do, what your week looks like, what you're feeling, that there is always a seat at the counter for you. And we hope that you feel that as well when you come to our space here with Means of Play. If you want to find us, if you want to find out more about us, if you want to check out other episodes or even the spaces that Nate and I also work in, you can find us on meansofplay.com. And for our next episode, we will be doing we'll be talking about our first farming sim of the podcast, which should be a good one. Probably our first, but definitely won't be our last, since we both dabble in the farming sims. So we'll be talking about one that is coming out. Might even come out before this episode drops, but Fields of Mystria will be our next game of interest, games for playing. And so we wanted to set up a scenario and would love to hear your thoughts. That if you were to have to pick in a farming sim one of these mechanics, and you can only have one, just one of these, which one would you choose? And the 4 options are farming, naturally, the social interactions, social relationships, mining, or fishing. So you have to choose one: farming, social relationships, mining, or fishing.
Bonus points for why, of course. If we want to know not just which you chose, but also why you chose it.
Yeah. That's where the meat is, anyways.
Right.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But until next time, may you find a means of play.